185. Take the world, but give me Jesus. Will?
Good morning. Good morning. Good to see everybody. I'll take that. I'll take that from you now. Thank you. It's good to see everybody again this morning. If you would, we're going to be in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2 for our lesson this morning. So go ahead and turn there. We'll go to other places too, but have a lot of those on the screen. But 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. We spend a lot of our lives trying to be chosen in different ways, right? It starts early on the ball field. You want to be chosen for a certain team, right? Later on in life, you want to be chosen to certain colleges, trade schools, whatever it may be after high school. We want to be chosen by people we want to marry, right? We want to be chosen for a certain job after we get interviewed. We live a lot of our lives trying to be chosen, right? And what comes with this is, therefore, we live a lot of our lives trying to please people, trying to please others. This inherently is not bad, but it can lead to things that are detrimental in general, and in general is not necessarily what I'm talking about this morning, but it can also be detrimental to our faith if we are to be trying to please men rather than God. That's the title of my lesson this morning. I do have a title slide here. Please God rather than men is what we want to do. That's, believe it or not, that's actually green in the background. Oh well. So I want to look at this picture though. I was looking for maybe pictures that would illustrate my point, and I saw this. And this is a picture of a girl who has a bunch of holes in her, and she has her arms out. And what's she being handed? She's being handed all the different parts of her by other people. And it was kind of it was an interesting picture. I think you could take that a lot of ways, but it kind of fits my point that I want to talk about is we can live our lives in such a way where we're trying to get approval and please people and get all of our self-worth from other people. And we're just hands out waiting for that from other people. Give me the part of me that you have that will complete me. I need your approval. I need to seek to please you in my life. And this can be detrimental. Oh, thank you. That is better. We'll see if this is more green. It's a little more green, maybe. That it is better though. Thank you. So before we dive right into our text this morning, I want to open this up and discuss the type of people pleasing, that I want to make sure we're all on board with of what I'm talking about this morning. Because Paul actually, believe it or not, says he strives to please everybody. And you might think, well, what is the preacher talking about? So on the one hand, 1 Corinthians 10, 31 through 33 says, so, after he's talking about using our rights not to make other people stumble, but to give up our rights, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God. Just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that, now this is the key phrase, that they may be saved. So, on one hand, you should try to please everyone. We do not want to put stumbling blocks in front of people by maybe the things that we believe, the opinions we have. We want to try to live peaceably with all, Romans 12, that they may be saved. We don't want to put ourselves in the way of the gospel. So in that sense, we are a people, we are disciples that seek the good of everyone. Absolutely. That's not what I'm talking about this morning. On the other hand, Galatians 1 verse 10 tells us trying to gain worldly approval is completely incompatible with faith in God. Verse 10, Galatians 1. For I am now seeking, he's asking a question. For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. You see, incompatible. If he were trying to please man for the sake of pleasing man and having their approval in his life, he could not serve God faithfully. But at the same time, serving God faithfully means he wants to please everyone. Are you confused? Good. So I'm talking about the second one this morning. Are you trying to live your life just for the approval of man, or do you want to be approved by God? And this idea comes from our text in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. So if you would, go ahead and turn there in your Bibles or devices. I'm going to be starting in verse 1, actually. I'm going to read the first 12 verses. I'm just going to read it all, and then we're going to make application. For you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain. But though we had already suffered and been shamefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we had boldness in our God to declare to you the gospel of God in the midst of much conflict. For our appeal does not spring from error or impurity or any attempt to deceive. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, here it is, not to please man, but to please God, who tests our hearts. For we never came with words of flattery, or, as you know, nor with a pretext of greed. God is witness. Nor did we seek glory from above, whether from you or from others. Or excuse me, read that wrong. Nor did we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others, though we could have made demands as apostles of Christ. But we were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. So being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you had become very dear to us. I'll read a little bit more later. So, pleasing God, He and we want to live our lives in such a way where we are always trying to please God rather than men. And when we do that, we are going to see, at least in this passage, he talks about 3 things I want to bring out. I don't know why it's always 3. I guess somebody told a preacher they can't have 4 points. If you have 4, you get kicked out, I think. So, no. I just saw 3 different things here, and that's what I'm going to bring out. Our lives will be marked by 3 things that we see here that Paul's life was marked by if we are truly trying to please God rather than just pleasing men, right? Number 1, we will see that we will live and have persistent boldness in our life. You and I will be a people known to be persistent and bold in our faith. And I got to tell you, do we need that? Do we need that right now? Do we need to be people that are persistent and bold about our faith? We absolutely do. He brings it up with, for you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain, but though we had already suffered and been shamefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we had boldness in our God to declare to you the gospel of God in our midst of much conflict. He brings up this idea that right before he came, they were at Philippi, and he got shamefully treated. He was beaten, he was stoned, he was put in jail. And if he were trying to please men, would you keep going after that? Would you? If my whole life was to please man and try to get the approval of man, if Paul was all about trying to please man, would he have kept going? Not at all. First of all, he wouldn't have been an apostle of Christ. He had it made as a Jew. Did he not?
Yeah.
He was the highest of high of all Jews, studied at the feet of Gamaliel. He knew everything, had the reputation that all men would want. Why would he give that up? Because he had boldness, right? He was trying to please God. And he shows this in persistent faith. Again, he didn't come in vain. We had already been mocked, ridiculed, thrown in jail, all the persecutions, but I'm coming. I still came to y'all because we're persistent, we have boldness. And what led to this boldness? Yes, he's pleasing God, not man, but he believes in a gospel that he is not ashamed of, Romans 1:16. He's not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of salvation for all who believe, first to the Jew and to the Greek, right? It is the greatest message that he could ever have, that we can send to people. He had boldness because he had a great message. Do you guys know what boldness means? See, the word for boldness here is not necessarily what I thought. Now, when I think of boldness, I mentioned this in class, I think of David standing up to Goliath, right? I think of Stephen standing up to the authorities that are about to kill him. I think of Jesus for the same thing, right? Standing up to the Pharisees, calling them a brood of vipers, right? I think of these people with great faith that would stand against the authorities. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I will go to the fiery furnace. And God will save us, but even if not, we will not bow down to you. I think of the boldness of those people. But the Greek word here just literally means to express oneself freely. And I got to tell you, I was probably a little disappointed when I read that, because like, that's not where I want to go with this. But it is boldness to express oneself freely, because sometimes that comes with consequences that we don't want, right? Yeah. If we only want approval from men, then why would we even be bold? It would be better not to express ourselves freely, to say that we are followers of the way, that we follow Jesus who died and is resurrected. We follow God and his moral teachings that get us kicked out of so many places in society right now. But that is not the way of disciples. We need to be bold. It is the Hebrews 13:6 approach to life that says, so we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. What can man do to me? And I always answer that question with, he can do a lot, right? But what did Jesus say? Yeah, he can, right? And I always look at that, I'm like, that's such a frivolous question. What can man do to me? But that's the question of a disciple. Because Jesus tells us not to fear the one that can destroy the body only, but fear the one, God, who can destroy the body and the soul. We answer to a higher authority. We aim to please God. And yes, ultimately, what can man do to us? Remember, boldness is also contagious, and that's why we need this. When we are bold and we are trying to please God rather than men, it'll be contagious. Philippians 1:14. This is after Paul is talking about how I've been in prison for the gospel, but guess what? It actually serves the advancement of the gospel. He says, and most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord of my imprisonment, are much more bold. NIV says, will even dare to speak the word without fear. Boldness is contagious. We need to see this. We need to be a people that are bold and following Jesus, and it will be contagious. Number 2. Too far. We will be genuine. We will seek to be genuine in everything we do. Look at verse 3. For our appeal does not spring from error or impurity or any attempt to deceive, but just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God who tests our hearts. For we did not come with words of flattery, as you know, or a pretext of greed. Later on in verse 10, I haven't read this yet. I'm going to look at verse 9 and 10. For you remember, brothers, our labor and toil. We work night and day that we might not be a burden to any of you, while we proclaim to you the gospel of God. You are witnesses, and God also, how holy and righteous and blameless was our conduct towards you believers. We are to be a genuine people. People need to look at us and know that we mean what we say, we act on our beliefs, and we really care about other people. We are not in it for something else. You guys know what a snake oil salesman is? You guys know the phrase snake oil salesman? Well, for those who don't, and I had to do a little history here. I'm sure some already know all the history here. But in America and in Europe, but in the 19th century America, people would go around and say, I have this stuff called snake oil, and it will heal you. But here's the thing. That's not real. It's not a real thing. They would just have these minerals that they would put in a bottle and say it was snake oil and try to sell it to people, deceive them to make money off of the belief that they needed to be healed and they have the answer, right? In fact, if you look it up, there was actually a big lawsuit over this in 1916 of a certain man who did this. And so we still have the phrase today, oh, he's or she's a snake oil salesman, right? They're peddling something that is not real. They know it's not real. They're trying to deceive. We cannot live like this. Do we? Do we live our lives in trickery or deceit? Do we try to use flattery? What's flattery? Man, you look really good today. You know, you're really good at whatever it is. Now that I've buttered you up, I have something I want, right? Flattery is complimenting, but not meaning it. It's not genuine, right? We know there are certain times that your phone will ring. You'll look at the number, the contact, and be like, oh, what is he doing now? Now, I'm sure no one's ever said that in here. Because certain people might call and say, hey, you know, butter you up, and then they always want something, right? Their opening conversations are not always genuine. They're opening compliments, right? And if you've never gotten that call before, then you're probably that person. And I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, we've had those calls, right? And sometimes when we want something, we'll start off with the compliment, right? We teach our kids the compliment sandwich, right? Compliment first, get to the point you want to get to, and then compliment last, right? Well, I mean, is that always fair? Is that always good? Sometimes it's deceitful, guys. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was in 6th grade, there was a local church in my town in West Fork. I grew up in West Fork. Grew up in Fayetteville, then went to West Fork. And there was a big old game night, raffle night at a local church. And that was what it was billed at. One of my friends said, "Hey, you want to come?" My dad dropped me off. Of course I want to come. That sounds like fun, right? And so guys, at this church, I won a TV. I just want you to know, I put my name in a drawing and I won a TV. Pretty cool, right? And I hadn't gone to church. I didn't grow up in the church. And then it came to this point where everyone came to the front, and then a speaker got up, and the rest of it was all about Jesus. After I had won my TV and we gave away a lot of prizes to the local kids. So I might step on some toes this morning. But guys, that's deceitful. That's bringing people in on the pretext of we're going to have fun, and then I'm going to corner you with the gospel. And if that steps on your toes, that's okay. Because I also believe we should use everything to our ability to bring people to church. And this church has used this skating rink to have fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not calling y'all deceitful. We should bring in the community. There's nothing wrong with that. Get to know people. But then corner them. And I was even like, "Hey, Will, come on. He's given the accept Jesus into your heart. Okay, it's time. Let's go." And by their teaching, I became a Christian that night. Not by the New Testament's teaching. But that was deceitful. And that has stuck with me for a long time. And we can always just sit back and justify those kind of decisions. But Paul would never do that, because he understood that wasn't genuine. And we need to live our lives genuinely. A good name, Proverbs 22, verse 1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver or gold. Now that sounds like I just stepped on my entire point of not pleasing men. We're talking about a reputation here. If you have the reputation of constantly wanting to flatter and deceive to get what you want, you're not going to have a good name. And our name can affect the effectiveness of the gospel and how we live in this life. We must always be genuine. What kind of decisions did Paul make because of this? Well, he had all the ability to make demands as an apostle of Christ. But what did it say in verse 9? "For you remember, brothers, our labor and toil, we work night and day, that we might not be a burden to any of you, while we proclaim to you the gospel of God. You are witnesses, and God also, how holy and righteous and blameless was our conduct towards you." Paul understood how important it was to have that righteous, blameless conduct, because he was coming with them with the greatest message of all, and he wanted nothing. He didn't want his life to get in the way of it, and especially a life of being a snake oil salesman, right? And that happened a lot in the ancient world, and he was having to defend himself, because there were other people that called themselves apostles that would come in, sell them something, and when it didn't go well, they would leave them and go. And Paul was doing everything he could to make sure that he was not that person. One way we can show that we aren't genuine, though, and I had to look at my own life for this, because I was trying to think, what does this look like to me and you? Because, not everyone in here is going town to town and spreading the gospel, right? What does this look like to me and you? Well, I have to watch myself when I try to create friendships, that when I start inviting people to church and then they don't come, are they still my friends afterwards? Do I still talk to them afterwards? Do I still engage with them? Do I still try to share my life with them? Nothing will tell somebody more quickly that you are not genuine, and all you care about is to try to get people to come to church with you, and that's the only reason you'll be friends with them if we do that. And that is that is something I have to work on. We need to be genuine with people. And it starts, where does it start? It starts where everything else starts. It starts in the heart. We must refine our hearts to be more like Jesus. In 1 Peter 1:22 and 23, it says, having purified your souls by your obedience to the truth for a sincere brotherly love, clothe one another earnestly from a pure heart. Since you have been love one another earnestly from a pure heart, since you have been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and abiding word of God. We need to conform our lives to the word of God. And when we do that, we refine our hearts. We become more like Jesus, and people see the love we have. In John 13, he says the proof of the disciple is how you love one another. It's attractive, and we need to be genuine. That brings me to my last point, is Paul shared his very lives with other people, and we must do the same thing. It starts with being genuine, but then it doesn't stop there. Look at verse 7. But we were gentle among you. And I love the imagery here. Well, we were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her own children. A nursing mother taking care of her own children is very gentle. Very gentle. And I love the imagery here. So, being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you had become very dear to us. See, Paul saw them as God sees them. We need to see other people, our own brethren, and other people as God sees them. People whom Jesus died for. God gave his only son for these people. And they became so very dear to Paul. And how does that happen? Does that happen by saying, hey, would you believe in the gospel? No? Cool. See ya. No, he spent time with them. He shared his life with them. They just didn't see each other on Sunday mornings. That's not the way it worked. It can't work that way. It can't work that way with us, right? We need to be involved with one another. And, conflicts will happen when that happens. We talked about that a little bit in class. But that happens when we get involved with each other. But that's the way of a disciple. We share our lives with one another. And I believe this last point can only be done if we are truly trying to please God first and not man. And this is why I believe that. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, we know this very well. It says, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. How you guys doing with that? It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all, believes all, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. It believes the best in people. It hopes the best in people. It seeks the best for people, and this is all a choice. Yes, there was an emotion behind what Paul just wrote. You became very dear to us, but this is a choice. When we are seeking to please God first, we then see God. We see other people the way God sees them, and we see that they need Jesus just like you and I need Jesus, and we seek the best for them. And we have to be involved in each other's lives to do this correctly. We care about other people the way God does. And if we did this with the motivation of seeking man's approval first, man's approval changes. Love is not patient when man's approval changes and you want it. Love does not envy or boast when somebody else's approval that you want is tearing down this person over here, and you're like, I want their approval, so therefore I'm going to tear down this person too. Love is rude when you want man's approval. It insists on its own way when you want man's approval, right? This is a choice, and we can only do this properly by serving God and seeking to please God first. So I want you to look real quick at Romans 12. I don't have this on the screen because it's a little bit longer, but if you would, go ahead and turn. Romans 12. Let me start in verse 9. Let love be genuine. There's that word again. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. That's always kind of jumped off the page to me. Outdo, first of all, if I'm trying to outdo somebody, I'm probably trying to beat them at something. But Paul's like, absolutely, beat other people to be nicer to them than they are nicer to you, right? It's very interesting. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one for evil, but give thought to what is honorable in the sight of all, if possible. So far as depends on you, live peaceably with all. How are you doing with these things? I can read this every day and be like, I gotta get better here. This, again, can only be done if we know who we are serving first, because we are conforming our lives to Him and His Word, not man's approval. This changes like the wind if you are seeking man's approval. You might do some of these and not the others if you want to be approved by man. And it's tempting. We want to be accepted, do we not? Of course we want to be accepted, but we need to be accepted by God first. Look at back in 1 Thessalonians. Think about if you were not genuine and you were not sharing your lives with one another and you were not trying to be dear to one another, and if Paul was not trying to do any of that, how hard do you think this would have been? Verse 11, for you know how, like a father with his children, we exhorted each one of you and encouraged you and charged you to walk in a manner worthy of God, who calls you into His own kingdom and glory. Think about somebody that wouldn't care a lick about you, who has not ever shown that he or she is interested in you, and then starts trying to tell you to conform to God better and what to do. How does that come off to you? It's a lot harder than somebody who has invested their lives in you, who cares about you, who has shown that, who has shown up when you needed them the most, who then says, I have a better way. His name is Jesus. And you need Him too, just like I do. Or one another when we already have Jesus and we need to help each other and correct each other. If you're sharing your lives and you're genuine, that happens easier. It doesn't happen at all if you're trying to please man and not trying to live this way. So what's the point of this? Do we act certain ways only because as Christians we should just be nice? Like, I could have entitled this sermon, Be Nice. Because you should be nice. You're a Christian, right? Does our conduct only matter because, well, God said so? And I want to be very clear. If that's where it stopped, and I didn't make this next point, we should still do it. Because if God says so, God says so. But I want us to understand this next point. 1 Peter, I think I have this. I don't know. No, I do not. But I want you to turn to 1 Peter 2, 9 through 12. Our conduct, how we act in this world, matters. And it matters because, verse 9, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for His own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of Him who called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. If you weren't genuine, if you weren't bold, if you didn't give your lives to other people and try to be dear to them and share your lives, when you turn around and proclaim the excellencies of God and people see the way you're living and it's not conformed to the image of Jesus, what are they going to think about the excellencies of God? Are they going to take you seriously? They're not. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh, which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God in the day of invitation. Day of visitation. I'm about to give the invitation. In the day of visitation. Gentiles may see our conduct and the way we live, that we are bold for the faith, that we are truly genuine people. We're not trying to deceive people. We're not trying to use flattery to get what we want. And we want to be involved with people to help them the way we can for Jesus. They see this. And because of our conduct, they could become Christians. They see a better way in us. And that's why this is so important. But I truly believe we can only do this if we are seeking to please God first and not man. So this morning, not visitation, but invitation. This morning, the invitation is extended. For those of us who have been baptized into Christ, we are the chosen race, the royal priesthood, the holy nation, people for His own possession. He has made that provision for us because of the blood of Christ. But for those who are not, that invitation is open for all. To become children of God by repenting of our sins, to be baptized for the forgiveness of sins, to have the Holy Spirit that is our guarantee of the inheritance that we have one day. If there's anything we need to help you with, we need to pray with you, we need to help you walk this life better. If there's anything, please come as we stand and as we sing.
Take the world, but give me Jesus. All its joys are but a name, but his love abideth ever through eternal years the same. Oh, the height and depth of mercy, oh, the length and breadth of love, oh, the fullness of redemption, pledge of endless life above. Take the world, but give me Jesus. In his cross my trust shall be, till with clearer, brighter vision, face to face, my Lord I see. Oh, the height and depth of mercy, oh, the length and breadth of love, oh, the fullness of redemption, pledge of endless life above. You may be seated. Thank you, Will. Appreciate that very much.